Jake Thompson woke up early every morning. He kissed his wife Lisa and their 2 kids goodbye and headed out to drive his yellow taxi in New York City. Life was tough for Jake. He worked long hours, dealt with bad traffic, grumpy passengers, and unpredictable weather. But no matter what, he always smiled. "I believe in treating people right," he often said. Whether it was helping an older woman with her bags or being patient with a lost tourist, Jake cared about his passengers. His taxi wasn't fancy. It had squeaky brakes and scratches, but it carried something special: kindness. Most nights, Jake came home tired, too exhausted to even eat dinner. But he never complained. He knew his hard work helped his family survive. "One day, my kids will have better lives," he'd tell Lisa, proud of the sacrifices he made. One rainy evening, Jake parked near a quiet street corner. It had been a slow day, and he needed one more ride to make ends meet. As he thought about calling it a night, his phone buzzed with a new request from a nearby apartment building. When Jake got there, a panicked woman ran toward his car. She was soaking wet from the rain, holding her stomach tightly. Her face was full of fear. "Please hurry," she begged, climbing into the back seat. "I think my baby's coming." Jake nodded quickly. "Don't worry, ma'am. We'll get you to the hospital." Little did Jake know this ride would change everything. For him, for the woman, and for many others. The rain poured harder as Jake started driving. The woman in the back seat, Emily, was breathing heavily, clutching her stomach. "It's coming faster than I thought," she said, her voice shaking. Jake glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Stay calm, ma'am. We'll get you there." But deep down, he was worried. The hospital was still far away, and the streets were slick with rain. Every red light felt like a lifetime. "I'm Emily, by the way," she said suddenly, trying to distract herself from the pain. "Thank you for picking me up." "Jake," he replied with a quick nod. "Just focus on breathing, Emily. We'll be okay." But the situation grew worse. Emily groaned louder, gripping the seat tightly. "It's too soon. I wasn't supposed to deliver for another 2 weeks." Jake's heart raced. He knew they couldn't waste any more time. The main roads were jammed with late-night traffic, and every second counted. Making a quick decision, he turned off the highway onto smaller streets. "Where are we going?" Emily asked, panic rising in her voice. "This way is faster," Jake said firmly, though he wasn't entirely sure. The narrow streets were tricky, especially in the rain, but it was their best chance. As Jake navigated the maze of backroads, Emily's contractions got closer together. She cried out in pain, and Jake's hands tightened on the wheel. "Hang on, Emily. You're strong." Suddenly, Emily screamed, "Jake, I think the baby's coming now." Jake froze for a moment, then pulled over under a dim streetlight. His mind raced. There was no time to reach the hospital. He grabbed his phone and called emergency services. "I need help," he shouted. "A woman is having a baby in my taxi." The operator stayed calm. "Okay, Jake, listen carefully. I'll guide you through this." For the next few minutes, Jake followed the instructions step by step. He handed Emily a clean towel from his emergency kit and encouraged her to push. Despite his fear, he kept his voice steady. "You're doing great, Emily. Just one more push." Finally, a tiny cry filled the car. A baby boy had arrived. Jake wrapped him in the towel and placed him gently in Emily's arms. Tears streamed down her face as she held her newborn son. "Thank you, Jake," she whispered. "You saved us." Jake exhaled deeply, his hands trembling. "Welcome to the world, little guy," he murmured softly. Minutes later, they reached the hospital. Doctors rushed Emily inside, assuring Jake that both mother and baby were healthy. As Jake watched them disappear through the doors, he realized how close they'd come to disaster, and how much his quick thinking had mattered. Later, while waiting for updates, Jake learned something surprising. Emily wasn't just any passenger. She was Emily Carter, a famous Hollywood actress. News of her dramatic delivery spread quickly, and reporters began gathering outside the hospital. But Jake didn't stick around to hear the buzz. He quietly returned to his taxi, ready to move on to his next fare. What he didn't know was that Emily wouldn't forget his kindness or let him go unrecognized. The next morning, Jake woke up feeling uneasy. He couldn't stop thinking about Emily and her baby. Was she okay? Did the doctors take good care of them? He shook his head, trying to focus on the day ahead. It's just part of the job, he muttered to himself as he started his taxi. But later that afternoon, while waiting at a red light, a sleek black car pulled up beside him. The window rolled down, and Jake froze when he saw who was inside. Emily Carter, smiling warmly. She looked different now, dressed in stylish clothes, but her eyes were just as kind as they'd been the night before. "Jake?" she called out. "Can we talk for a moment?" Jake hesitated, unsure what to say. He parked his taxi and stepped out, wiping his hands nervously on his jeans. "Ma'am, I'm glad you're okay. How's the baby?" "They're both doing great, thanks to you," Emily replied, her voice filled with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you for what you did." Jake shrugged modestly. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Emily said firmly. "Not everyone would have stayed calm and helped the way you did. You saved my son's life and mine." Her words caught Jake off guard. No one had ever called him a hero before. He just nodded quietly, unsure how to respond. Emily continued, "I want to do something for you, for all drivers like you. What you do every day is so important, yet no one seems to notice." Over the next few days, Emily kept her word. She tracked down Jake and invited him to meet her at a quiet cafe. There, she shared her plan. She wanted to set up a national fund to support taxi drivers and gig workers. The fund would provide financial assistance, better working conditions, and access to health care for people like Jake who worked tirelessly behind the scenes. "This is too much," Jake stammered, overwhelmed by her generosity. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do," Emily replied gently. "You reminded me of something important, that real heroes aren't always the ones in the spotlight. They're people like you, showing up when it matters most." News of Emily's initiative spread quickly. She used her platform to raise awareness about the challenges faced by drivers: long hours, low pay, and lack of benefits. Celebrities and corporations joined the cause, donating millions to the fund. Jake became the face of the movement, sharing his story to inspire others. For Jake, it was surreal. One moment, he was just another driver struggling to make ends meet. The next, he was standing beside a famous actress, advocating for change. But through it all, he remained humble. To him, none of this was about fame, it was about making life better for people like him. As the weeks passed, Jake watched as the fund began transforming lives. Drivers received training programs, health insurance, and even scholarships for their children. For the first time in years, Jake felt hopeful, not just for himself, but for everyone in his line of work. And deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The fund Emily created quickly gained momentum. Named the Driver's Hope Initiative, it became a beacon of support for taxi drivers, rideshare workers, and delivery personnel across the country. Jake played a key role in shaping the program, sharing insights from his own experiences to ensure it addressed real needs. At first, Jake felt out of place attending meetings with business leaders and policymakers. He was just a taxi driver. What did he know about running a national fund? But Emily insisted he stay involved. "Your voice matters more than anyone else's," she told him. "You've lived this life. You understand what these workers go through every day." With Emily's encouragement, Jake began speaking at events and rallies. At first, he stumbled over his words, nervous about addressing large crowds. But as he spoke about late-night drives, long hours away from family, and the struggles of making ends meet, people listened. His honesty resonated deeply with audiences, inspiring both drivers and donors to get involved. The initiative provided more than just financial aid. It offered training programs to help drivers learn new skills, mental health resources to combat stress and burnout, and advocacy campaigns to push for better wages and safer working conditions. For many drivers, it was the first time they felt seen and valued. One evening, after a particularly successful fundraising gala, Emily pulled Jake aside. "You're amazing at this," she said with a proud smile. Look at what you've helped build. Jake shook his head modestly. I didn't do anything special. I just shared my story. That's exactly why it's special, Emily replied. People connect with authenticity. You've given them hope, and that's priceless. As the months passed, Jake noticed changes not only in others but also within himself. He stood taller, spoke louder, and carried a newfound confidence. His wife, Lisa, teased him about it one night over dinner. You're turning into quite the activist, she said with a grin. I'm just trying to make things better, Jake replied. If I can help even one person avoid the struggles I went through, it's worth it. Word of the Drivers' Hope initiative spread far beyond New York City. Other cities adopted similar programs, and soon countries around the world began reaching out for guidance. Celebrities who had once ignored the challenges faced by gig workers now used their platforms to amplify the cause. Corporations pledged millions, recognizing the importance of supporting the backbone of their industries. For Jake, the most rewarding part wasn't the money or recognition. It was seeing the smiles on fellow drivers' faces. Men and women who had once felt invisible now walked with pride, knowing someone cared about their well-being. Families received scholarships, medical bills were paid, and dreams once thought impossible began to feel within reach. Through it all, Jake stayed grounded. To him, the fund wasn't about changing the world, it was about proving that kindness could spark meaningful change. By helping Emily deliver her baby that rainy night, he hadn't just saved 2 lives. He'd ignited a movement that would benefit thousands. And deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The impact of the Drivers' Hope initiative didn't stop with financial aid and training programs. It transformed entire communities. Inspired by Emily's generosity, Jake became a mentor to younger drivers, teaching them not just how to navigate city streets but also how to advocate for themselves and their peers. Your voice matters, he'd tell them during breaks at union meetings or informal gatherings at diners. If you don't speak up, no one will know what you're going through. His words resonated deeply with the next generation of drivers, many of whom were immigrants or single parents working tirelessly to provide for their families. Together, they formed support networks, pooling resources to help colleagues facing hardships like medical emergencies, car repairs, or school fees for their kids. Word of Jake's leadership spread beyond New York City. Other drivers began reaching out, asking for advice on starting similar initiatives in their own towns. Jake happily shared what he'd learned, encouraging them to adapt the model to fit their unique needs. Meanwhile, Emily continued using her influence to shine a light on underappreciated workers. She launched campaigns highlighting the challenges faced by gig workers, not just drivers but also delivery couriers, warehouse staff, and caregivers. Her documentaries and social media posts brought attention to issues like low wages, lack of benefits, and unsafe working conditions. One campaign, titled Behind Every Delivery, went viral. It featured stories of delivery drivers braving snowstorms, long hours, and grueling schedules to bring food and packages to people's doorsteps. Viewers were moved to tears, flooding comment sections with messages of gratitude and calls for change. Emily often credited Jake as the inspiration behind her work. He reminded me that true heroes are everywhere, she said during an interview. They're the ones keeping our cities running, even when no one notices. Their partnership proved that collaboration between ordinary citizens and influential figures could create lasting change. True success wasn't measured by wealth or fame, it was about lifting others up, even when no one was watching. As the years passed, Jake watched his community flourish. Drivers formed cooperatives, pooling earnings to buy newer, safer vehicles. Families celebrated milestones together, knowing they had each other's backs. Even passengers began showing more respect, tipping generously and thanking drivers for their hard work. For Jake, the transformation was personal. His own children grew up seeing their father not just as a provider but as a leader, a man who stood up for what was right. His son started volunteering at local shelters, while his daughter joined a youth group advocating for fair labor practices. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Emily stopped by Jake's taxi to check in. "You've done something incredible here," she said, looking around at the bustling city streets. "And it all started with you." Jake shook his head, brushing off the compliment. "It started with you. You saw something in me that I didn't see in myself." "No," Emily replied firmly. "I just followed your example. You showed me what's possible when people care for each other." Through it all, Jake remained humble. A simple taxi driver turned advocate who believed in the power of kindness and teamwork. His story inspired countless others to step up, speak out, and give back. Even small gestures made a difference. Drivers began organizing drives to collect food and clothing for local shelters. Passengers donated generously after hearing about the initiative, turning taxis into symbols of goodwill. And through it all, Jake stayed focused on what mattered most: helping others rise higher together. Years later, Jake stood in front of a crowd gathered at a park in New York City. The occasion was the annual Drivers' Hope Day, a celebration honoring gig workers and their contributions to society. Families laughed, children played, and drivers proudly displayed their taxis and delivery vans, now adorned with colorful banners that read, "Together we rise." It was hard to believe how much had changed since that rainy night when he'd helped Emily deliver her baby. Emily herself was there, standing beside him as they cut the ceremonial ribbon to open a new community center funded by the initiative. "This place belongs to all of you," she said, addressing the cheering crowd. "It's proof that when we come together, anything is possible." Jake smiled, his heart swelling with pride. What had started as one act of kindness, a detour through rain-soaked streets, had grown into something extraordinary. Drivers across the country now had access to resources they'd never dreamed of: affordable healthcare, retirement plans, and scholarships for their kids. Entire families were thriving because someone decided to care. For Jake, the journey wasn't about personal gain. It was about proving that even the smallest moments of compassion could spark ripples of change. By choosing to help Emily that night, he hadn't just saved 2 lives. He'd shown the world what happens when people look out for each other. As the celebration continued, Jake wandered off to a quiet corner of the park. He sat on a bench, watching the sun dip below the skyline. Children chased bubbles, couples strolled hand in hand, and drivers shared stories over plates of food. Everyone seemed connected not just by the event, but by a shared sense of hope. Emily joined him after a while, sitting quietly beside him. "You've built something amazing here," she said softly. "We all did," Jake replied. "This isn't mine. It belongs to everyone who believed in it." Emily nodded, understanding completely. Jake's humility reminded her why she'd wanted to help in the first place. True heroism wasn't about seeking glory. It was about lifting others up, even when no one was watching. Later that night, as Jake drove home in his taxi, he paused to look at the stars. He thought about the passengers he'd met over the years, the ones who cried in the back seat, laughed during long rides, or simply said thank you before stepping out. Each moment mattered, no matter how small. Back then, he'd simply wanted to do his job well. Now, he saw how deeply connected we all are, and how every act of kindness has the power to transform the world. For Jake, the journey wasn't over. It would never truly end. As long as there were people willing to step forward and help, the ripple effect would continue spreading, touching hearts and changing lives one act of compassion at a time. And so, Jake kept driving, not just through city streets, but toward a future where everyone, no matter their role, felt valued and supported. Because when we lift each other up, we rise higher than we ever thought possible. If Jake's story inspired you, share it with friends and family. Let us know in the comments. How has kindness or courage impacted your life? Your stories inspire us to keep creating tales that matter,